Good morning. We say good Yom Tov as well. Hey, Tavis. We're in Ayin Beis, volume 3. We are at the bottom of page 1389. Aleph Shin Peites. Beriyah, Yetzirah, Asiyah. Chaymer Tzura Tikkun. The process of how from Ayin becomes a Yesh. From a state of we'll call it a divine energy state, becomes the consciousness and identity of existence. That's a good way to, I think, go from Ayin to Yesh. But it doesn't happen, as he said, in one shot. It doesn't just become a Yesh. It goes through first, it's a Chaymer Poshet. It's a shapeless nebulous state. Then it starts getting general shape and form. That's still called Afshariyas Mitzias. Then it becomes Mitztayir, B'tzir, Mitzias. And then the final step, Tikkun or Asiyah, is when it's a finished final product with all the details, as we discussed yesterday. Like he said, that everything that has Siyah B'cholos has some details, but the details can be still in a very generous way. And that's what Tikkun comes, that it makes the distinct and distinguishable details. So Metoyu, he brought from the Sefer Yetzirah, Yotzar Metoyu Mamish, V'osa Eina Yeshne. He shaped from Toyu something of Mamoshes, a substance. So Toyu is the state of the Chaymer Poshet, the shapeless matter. Toyu is Chaymer Hayuli. Davar HaMetah B'nei Adam, that still defies description. The Yotzim Metoyu Mamish Ub'chin Sira Chaymer, that's Mamoshes Dover, sees Kloli, and that's a level of Boyhu. Boyhu. Now we're beginning to recognize Nikir Hanitza Ba'adova. You start seeing the shape and form, like I explained it with a fetus. When you start seeing the form begin to develop, but still in a dayan shein, but Mikol Mokim B'chinas Ayin, you still call it a state of Ayin, comparatively speaking, because you don't yet see the very distinct and every detail the particle, because it's not yet Metzias Yesh. And the fact that it says Yosim Matei Mamish, Eina Kavona Yesh Mamish, and he gave the example of Chachma, where the Pardes writes that Chachma is called a Yesh, but the intention is not Yesh, Yeshus Musig Mamish, Yeshus Gomer. It's just that in relation to true Ayin and a true completely energy state, it's Ayin Vayesh, Lo Yeshus Gomer, El Kasher La Ayin. You're basically saying it's not that state that is completely devoid of any substance, but it's still not also a full developed Yesh, as we discussed yesterday. And the reason for this is because everything goes from the Ayin to the Yesh, so it's closer to the Ayin it is, the less shape it has, until it congeals and becomes more solidified. We gave different examples, whether it's gas, liquid, ice. One of our dedicated class members, Meira, writes to me today, another example that maybe can be used from cooking, the difference when you make a challah. So in Atzilus, we get all the ingredients in a spiritual stage. In Beriyah, it comes to a chaymer, you just have raw piece of dough. In Yetzirah, that comes formed as a piece of dough, and Asiyah, it is baked. Okay, so that may be another example, and I'm sure there are in chemistry, in cooking, and many places where something is being shaped from one state and being transformed, a metamorphosis from one state, and going through a transition to another. You'll have these steps, generally these 3 steps.
I don't know the exact, because a dough is already a Metzias Mamish.
But in the physical world, the dough goes through 3 stages, you can say. There's the raw dough, is when you begin to, and I don't want to debate an example that's our examples. It's just examples that may work or may not work for some. They all work because they all explain stages of development. That's the bottom line. Okay. Well, you can have just a whole concept of dough, then you can make one piece of dough, and then you can start shaping it. Many different ways to explain it. Anyway, I'm just sharing what one of our class members shared, so that's all. Okay. So let's continue where we're up to. Up to the line, the Pelech Harimban. It's 7 lines from the bottom of page 1389. Okay. So now you just explained that it goes in a progressive order, a progression of steps from Ayin to Yesh, Beriyah, Yetzirah, Asiyah. But we have a question, there's a qualification. The Hagam, we know the Savas Yeshu b'derech ein arech. The creation of the Yesh, it's explained in many places, is not a gradual progression. When you, for example, diminish light, you can say it diminishes. But the very creation of a Yesh, and we discussed this yesterday a bit as well, is in ein arech. It's not like Ilah v'Olah. Ilah v'Olah is a cause and effect. So, for example, I convey an idea to you, teaching an idea. You have a mind, I have a mind, and I'm conveying an idea, and the idea in turn spawns more ideas. But they're all in the world of ideas. An idea is never going to become a physical entity because it's a cognitive, it's an intellectual experience. So there has to be an element of ein arech to make from ayin to yesh, because you're leaping over from one state to another state. However, that doesn't negate what he said here. It's still not a complete quantum leap. Like here was ayin, and then poof, yesh. It's true, there is an element where there is a leap, but it's not ein arech legamri, ki ayin yesh le mokem kiru b'shaychus alei yesh. Because the way God made it is he wanted the ayin to have some relationship, something in common with the yesh. So let's explain, how can you have both? How could it be ein arech and also have progression? So this is a concept in truth in Chassidus in general. We all know that Atzmus, meaning the essence of God, the creator, is completely beyond us. But yet he created a whole Seder Shtalshlus. He created a whole stepping stones. Even before the Tzimtzum, we learn about Koydem Alei Saratzen, before it arose in his desire. Then it arose in his desire in general terms. And then in more specific terms, and then he started envisioning creation. The artist, before he becomes an artist, he's completely beyond being an artist. But then he chooses to become an artist. And the artist can create infinite amounts of art. And then he chooses to create one type of art. And then he immerses himself and invests to create that art. So just because there's an infinite distance from the essence all the way to us, the same time God wanted there should be some progression so we have a relationship. So there is an element of ein arech, like we spoke yesterday from a Geras HaKedesh. To create a yesh that does not feel it has a source can only come from Atzmus. But that doesn't mean that the yesh does not have things in common. For example, we are a yesh in this world, and yet we have 10 faculties. We have Chochmah Bina Das, we have Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Yesod, Malchus, and with that we have something in common with the world of Asiyah, the spiritual Asiyah, with the world of Yetzirah that has 10 spheres, with the world of Beriyah that has 10 spheres, with Atzilus that has 10 spheres, all the way to the 10 spheres, the hidden spheres before the Tzimtzum. If we're so completely distant, we should have nothing in common. But that's not the case. So, for example, take the human body. The human body is a yesh, but we also have a soul. God gave us the Tzelem Elokim, the divine image. He invested a soul, which is a chelik elokam mal mamish. And the body itself is also B'Tzelem Elokim. In Sfarim, it says, for example, the face has a correspondence with Yud Kei Vav Kei. The eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears is like the 4 Yud Kei Vav Kei. And the very body itself is the three levels of mind. Reish Guf Regel is like the 3 sections in the Beis Hamikdash and the Mishkan, which correspond to 3 sections in the higher worlds. So in other words, even though there's an element of real yesh needing a leap, but it still goes through a progression of a tzimtzum, and then a kav, and one world, and the next world, and the next world. So that's a critical thing to keep in mind. So even though there is an element of infinite distance, but there's also an element of commonality. And the truth is, a relationship with God requires both, as I've explained many times. Avos Hashem, loving God. V'yadaita Hashem, to know God. Da'asa l'kei avicha. These things require that we understand, and God invested himself in wisdom, in Torah. He says, I am revealing myself in a way that you can understand me. Now, we all know that he's beyond our thoughts and beyond our understanding. But the same God that is beyond our understanding chose to also infuse himself, to embed himself into logic, into the mind, into emotions, into our human experiences. So Ava is more of a close relationship. But then there's Yira, where we experience the awe and the distance, or the infinite distance between us. So both are true. The Ein Arech, which is also comes together, like he said, not Ein Arech Lagamri, because the Ayin and the Yesh do have some relationship, as we're learning here. Beriyah, Yetzirah, Asiyah, as it congeals, as it becomes more solidifies from a more amorphous and nebulous state into becoming something with a general shape and then a specific detailed shape in the world of Asiyah Tikkun. Okay. Umeshum zeh, because there's a kiruv between Ayin and Yesh, and there's something in common, meaning they are relating to each other, that's why it cannot just begin that everything is just a complete Yesh mamish. Umeshum zeh, yesh b'b'chinas mitzias mamish. The Yesh can be a mitzias mamish in the early stages, so the first stage is beyond mitzias, beyond Avsharis HaMitzias. Think of, again, the artist does not become an artist yet. He's not even envisioning art. But then from no Avsharis HaMitzias becomes Avsharis HaMitzias, the possibility for something to begin to become some type of substance. V'zeh be'elam haBeriyah, that's in the world of Beriyah. Shemeya shama ayin aleki, u'kameshin is bar le'il. Like if you remember, on the bottom of page 1387, he said, Yesh Shleimer, that the ayin aleki radiates in the world of Beriyah, because it's the first Yesh. That's why you have the ayin of Keser in Beriyah to be able to create Beriyah. So that's bottom of page 1387. And as the Yesh begins to move away and distance itself from its source of the Ayin Aleki, it becomes more congealed, more solidified, and therefore starts developing Yetzirah. And then after that, the world of Asiyah and Tikkun. So that's how it works. So there is, therefore, a progression as we move from the Ayin and the Yesh, and as farther from the Yesh it becomes, from the Ayin it becomes, the more the Yesh takes on more substance. It's like, to give another example, when you're a student of a teacher, and you're in the presence of your teacher, your identity is far less significant because you're completely sublimated and subjugated to your teacher. But when you leave your teacher's presence and you go teach on your own, then your Yesh becomes more of an identity. And the farther you go, the more your Messias becomes significant. We're not talking about ego or anything negative. It's just that when you're close to the sunlight, close to the source of the Ayin, obviously you're going to be far less substance. And as you distance yourself and move forward, you become more solidified. Or just like, when you talk about baking or cooking, when a food comes out of the oven and it's still boiling hot, it's still in a way very soft. And then you wait for it to cool down and then it becomes harder. It becomes congeals and it becomes solidified. Or like we spoke about gas, liquid, and ice. So when it's in a more closer to the Ayin, it's more of an amorphous state. As it becomes more, as it moves away from there, it becomes more substance. Okay, let me stop. Any questions so far? So now the Rebbe Rashab is going to continue to say why three, the significance of these three steps. So let's continue reading. And that fact that it divides into three levels, Yetzirah Tikkun, Beriyah, Yetzirah, Asiyah, hu mipnei, that's due to the fact shekamoi kain ba'koyach va'ayin aliki yesh gimel madregas. So now the plot thickens. He's making it even more gishmak. It's not just three stages of development, is because since the ayin and the yesh have something in common, so just like in the koyach and the ayin aliki, before it became a yesh, there are three levels. So too, when it congeals and starts solidifying, there are also three levels. And what are the three levels? He says, "V'hu ki kol koyach mitchilas haviyosei at sev giluyov." Every entity, every faculty, every koyach, every power, every energy, from the beginning of its coming into being, from the beginning of its inception, until it concludes, until it becomes a full developed entity, yesh begimel madregas. There's three levels. What are they? So now you're going to think the three levels in the ayin, like in the oyer. And from there, comes the three levels in the Yetzirah Tikkun, in the keli, or in the matter itself. So let's see, what are they? Ha'alef, level number one. Kamoshahu, next page, 1390. Kamoshu be'etzem, v'lei b'bchinas gilui adayim. So you're talking about, let's say, the faculty to see, the power of vision, or the power to write, or the power to throw a stone, or the power to walk. So before it's an actual power, an actual faculty that's functioning, it's in a state of be'etzem, and there's no gili. In other words, it doesn't mean just because you have the power to write that you're writing all the time. It could be in a state, like a state of hiyuli, doesn't use that expression, but it's a state of kamoshu be'etzem, lebchinas gili adayim. Just like you could have a person who's a brilliant person, but they're not actualizing their brilliance. It's just there. They have the brain power, so to speak. A car, take an automobile. It may go 100 miles an hour, but when it's parked, it's in a dormant state. So the power that it has is now not active. It's there, but it's not in any way. Base, step number two, commission is gala, how it gets revealed. But it gets revealed only in a general way. And the third stage, as it's revealed in a very specific way. So this would be any faculty. If you're teaching a class, so there's the state where you have the power to teach, but it's still within you and not being expressed, then you express it in general terms, and then it comes down a gili prati. We'll soon understand the difference between this and Yetzirah Tikkun. It may sound very similar, but he's clearly saying this is in the ayin, not in the yesh, the three levels. He's giving an example of one faculty, the faculty of midas hachesed, the attribute, an emotion of kindness. So there's a state where it's a koyach yuli. It's in a potential archetypal state that you have the personality of chesed within you. You were born with a chesed. Every soul has chesed, gvura, tiferes. But it's still in a state, we can call it an amorphous, nebulous state, which is the koyach yuli, she'ein b'chinas gili klal. There's no gili at all. But it's a faculty, it's an existing faculty. It's only that everything, all the giluim that will come from it, all the chesed you'll ever do will come from this reservoir, from this so-called quintessential state. Beis, what's the second level of chesed? How chesed now is beginning to become stimulated and aroused. So it's becoming a gili klali, a general revelation. What is that? Hainu. That means that the person gets stimulated, aroused, awakened to do kindness. So you can have chesed within you not feel it at all and not be in any way stimulated to be kind. It remains completely dormant within you. Here, there's been I say this that you have the feeling I would like to do chesed. I have an urge, a longing, a drive to bestow kindness. But it's not obvious yet. In what form will this kindness manifest? So you could have a situation where you don't feel anything. Then I feel a desire, something in me that I should do something today to show kindness. But it's not come down to what the details are, how, what, who, to whom, in what form, in what fashion. So then comes step 3. Step 3 is hachesed b'derech prat. This kindness now comes in a very specific way. So you've decided, I'm going to visit a hospital, and bikar chaylim, to visit someone that's sick, God forbid, or I'm going to invite guests to my home, or I'm going to give charity to a specific person or a specific organization. So there you have 3 levels. There's the chesed as it is in the source, nothing at all coming out of that. Then comes a general hiserus, an awakening, a stimulation, and inspiration that I want to do kindness, but I haven't yet determined how and in what form and fashion. And then comes Eifin and Gimel, that it comes by Eza Prat, by Eza Tiatov, the Eifin Amakabel, She Yiskabel Etzle. The chesed, the teiv, will be the kindness being bestowed is commensurate to the recipient. In other words, it's not just I want to be good, I want to do something kind today, I want to be charitable, but you're measuring it according to the needs and of the recipient. She is kabel etzle, that he should be able to receive it, which is an additional point. That means you're also calculating, you're strategizing how to give the kindness in a way that's measured according to the person to be able to receive it. Not just I want to be kind, but you're specifically the details of how to channel it, how to present it, how to manifest it. Okay. And just as we said with chesed, the same is with every energy form, with any type of transmission, it has these 3 levels. Hainu, and again he spells it out, which means as it extends, as it's drawn from the core. It's still on a core, essential level, and it's not in a state of revelation. And then comes 2. Step 2, it comes in a form of it's revealed. But it's not yet defined and not broken down into details yet. And then 3, how it comes into parameters, definitions, and breakdown of details. And the parentheses that Rebbe Rashab now adds, Ubederech Klal, in general, these are the 3 levels, Ubchinas Etzem, V'toyar, Upula. So you may recall we talked about names. There's a Shem Etzem, the name of something. Shem HaToyar is a description of it, and Pu'ula is its function. So B'derech Klal, he's comparing this to these 3 levels. So Shem Etzem is like saying Chesed, but it's not telling you what type of Chesed. Toyar is telling you it's a Chesed that is dedicated to helping people, and Pu'ula is the actual function with the details of how that becomes a functional entity. So he's saying that's Etzem, Toyar, and Pu'ula. The core entity, like you could say someone is Ruven. My name is Simon. That's a Shem Etzem. That doesn't describe what type of person I am and so on. Toyar is a description of what type of person, and Pu'ula is how I actually function, where it comes into real, actual utilitarian function. Okay. And now he goes back. That the oir also, as it's coming from its source, before it's even become a yesh, the energy, even in the divine level, goes through etzem, gilui, kloli, and gilui proti. So because it manifests in 3 stages. Al kain, hi hayisav is gam kain. begimel madregas now. That's why also the creation of the yesh is also in 3 stages. Shem bechinas Beriyah, Yetzirah, Asiyah. So the basically, like, he doesn't say kalim, but essentially just like the ayin and the oyer goes through 3 stages from an etzem level to a general revelation to specifics. So now when it creates the yesh also begins first as just raw matter. Then it gets a general form and shape, and then a specific shape and form. This is really beautiful because it creates the eloquence that the Ur and Keli, both of them have these 3 stages, and then they correspond to each other, and one affects the other. So you just see, we're talking about interface, the progression from the highest levels to the lower levels, both in Ur and in Yesh. Okay, one second, let me stop here. So this has been, so far, a long explanation on the 3 levels. Remember, it all began because he wanted to talk about Eir and Cheshech, as in Beriyah and Yetzirah. That Beriyah is Cheshech because it's a higher level and it's concealed. And Gilui is a lower level, but it has a quality that the concealed level doesn't have. That's how all this began. So now he's going to take us back to the main focus was not so much Asiyah, was Beriyah and Yetzirah corresponding to Talmud and Mishnah, as he discussed earlier, that each one has something the other doesn't have. In Beriyah, it's more concealed, and Yetzirah is more revealed. So now we'll understand how that works. Remember, the question was, Beriyah is higher than Yetzirah, and yet there's a quality. It says it's Geruah, it's lesser because it's not revealed yet. So this is what he now concludes: and this is the meaning that he shaped light, Yetzirah, and created concealment or darkness. The word bara cheshach, beida cheshach is referring to a state of cheshach and helam, like it's still a raw piece of matter. It's not revealed yet the details. Shehi b'chinas stimus adayin is still in a state of a closed state, a closed up state. She'eni b'chinas gilui, that's not in the form of revelation, like we learned about the chemer. The Yetzirah b'chinas erve gilui, and Yetzirah is now drawing out the tzura, beginning to have shape and form, at least in general terms. So it's a form of gilui. Okay, and with that we conclude the paragraph, but the topic is far from over. The Rebbe Rashab is now going to continue. Now that we explained Beriyah Yetzirah in a much more detailed way, we understand how it works. So now the question is, which is higher? So we learned that Gilui has a quality because it's revealed. He's going to discuss that in the next paragraph. And we're going to read on. I just want to stop here if anybody has any questions.
That 3rd level, Rabbi Jacobson, it's when the Rebbe said, it's not only the details of who you're going to give to, say, for charity, but how to give it and why, what to do, give it, how, in which manner, and taking in consideration the makabel, their thing. That seems to me like isn't that more of a level of chachma and bina, rather than within the chesed itself? It's an additional step, so to speak, where your chachma and bina is now controlling or integrating with the pure chesed. It's like an additional step into something extraneous to the chesed itself.
Perhaps, but it's not relevant to our conversation here, because here he wants to explain the 3 stages of how chesed or any faculty emerges. Is the person using chachma bina when they break it down? Fine, but that's, that doesn't change what we're discussing. It still comes down to the etzem of the etzem faculty is general expression, and then it's specific expression. What it takes to specifically express it, whether it's chachma bina or research or you're getting advice, that's incidental here. That's just how you get to that stage, but it's not really relevant to what he wants to explain here is the Beriyah Yetzirah Asiyah 3-step progression. Without going into how you how you figure out the Eifen Tia Tovel if the Eifen and Makabel. In Igeres HaKedesh, when he talks about Netzach and Hoid, he says Kloyas Yoitzes, that Netzach and Hoid is how the teacher, so-called, gets counsel and advice of how to transmit the chesed or transmit what he wants to pass on to his student. So sometimes it's Netzach and Hoid, not just Chochmah and Bina. But it's not really, that I think is not so relevant here in the context. In some places you may argue that in the three levels, it's like Chabad, Chagas, Nihi of every sphere. That Chabad is more the etzem of it. And Chagas is the general Gilui, and Nihi is how it comes into specific expression. But he doesn't allude to that at all here. And I would stay away from that because I don't see a need to elaborate on that level. Even though it's very possible those are the three stages of every faculty. It starts with Chabad. But here he says, Etzem, Gili Klali, Gili Prati. Those are the words he uses here.
So would that be, whether it's the Nihi or the Chabad, would that be within the Mida itself, within Chesed, the Chabad of Chesed, rather than Chabad of Seichel affecting the Midos?
Not necessarily. I don't know. He doesn't talk about it, and I don't see why it's important here.
Okay.
In other words, how you take a general chesed and break it down into details is not the discussion here. It's not what he wants to address. Here he wants to address there are these three levels. That's the focus in this mimer here. There are other places where it talks about, as I just explained, Igeres HaKedesh, Siman Tazvav, where he talks about how the process works from the higher spheres to the lower spheres. It's not what he wants, this is not his concern here. Okay. Are there any other questions? So let's move on. Let's continue. V'hine, new paragraph. V'hine, and now, im hayes, the b'chinas hastimus v'alam de Beriyah, that the concealed and hidden state of Beriyah, like earlier he said, it's not because it's a lower, it's because it's intensity. Remember we learned earlier that the higher the Gili, the more concealed it has to be, because you can't see it with a transparent glass. And now we explained Yetzirah because it's closer to the Ayin. The reason Beriyah is concealed is because it's closer to the Ayin. That's why it's only an amorphous, nebulous state, and it's not revealed. So Ima Yes, that this level of covering and concealment, the Beriyah hulamayla b'madrega mibchinas hagili d'Yetzirah. It's higher in level in the hierarchy than the revelation Yetzirah, which is step 2, which is a lower step. But kol mokim, nevertheless, yesh mayla b'Yetzirah ala Beriyah. There's a quality, a virtue that Yetzirah has over Beriyah. And what is that? Mashahu, Pchinas Hagili. That it's a state of revelation. Shazel Mailag Dela, that's a great quality. Why? Mipnei Shetachlis Hakavanu Pchinas Hagili. Because the ultimate purpose of God is that it should not remain in a higher, raw, and concealed state, but that it should come into a state of revelation. This is something I referred to, but here the Rebbe Rashab is saying it explicitly. So though Gili means it's coming down a level, but that's the kavanah. To remain concealed, even though it's a higher level, is not the ultimate purpose. It should come into a state of Gili. And that's what makes Yetzirah have something that Beriyah. So it's like saying, when the Rebbe, Alter Rebbe had a chassid, who everyone knew was a great mind. But the Alter Rebbe said, you're not using your potential to the fullest. So the chassid said, Rebbe, the fact is I could always be a lamdan. I have the power to be a lamdan. The Rebbe, Alter Rebbe responded, just like a ganef, a thief, is not someone who could be a thief, but who is an actual thief, so too a lamdan is not someone who could be a lamdan, but someone who's an actual lamdan. So to say I have the potential, beautiful. But in Yiddishkeit, in Torah, everything has to come from koyach de poil, maiso ike. It's interesting the Alter Rebbe used the example of a ganef. He could have used other examples. because he wanted to drive the point home that we're not going to accuse someone of being a thief if they never stole. It's only if they actually do it. Just because someone can doesn't mean anything. That's how insignificant it is. You don't accuse someone just because you have a Yetzirah that you acted on it. So Gili is critical in this picture, and that's a very vital point in this whole discussion. Because at the end of the day, we don't just want etzem; we need etzem begili, as I mentioned many times. There's actually a chiddush from the Rebbe in this regard. I mentioned it many times as well. In the Sikha Vayigash, which we're reading this week, actually, Chelikei Lekutei Sikha is volume 5. The second Sikha Vayigash is one of the big fundamental chidushim of the Rebbe. The Rebbe asks a question. I referred to it a few days ago. Yafasha achas b'tshuva ma'asim tevim ve'elam hazem ekol chay elam haba. 1 hour of tshuva and good deeds in this world, 1 hour, is worth more than the entire kol chay elam haba. Pretty big statement, right? Because the kavan is this world. Then it says Yafasha achas shel kedus ruach. 1 hour of ecstatic pleasure or pleasure. Be'elam haba, 1 hour outweighs, is worth more than all the pleasures of this world. Kol chai elam hazeh. The Rebbe brings there from the Kocha, the Rebbe Marash explains, Nachas ruach nivra, the nachas ruach of our pleasure, keiras ruach, is far more in Gan Eden, in elam haba. So all the pleasures in this world are overshadowed by that great pleasure in 1 hour. But nachas ruach beira, God's pleasure, is lasas leis baruch dira b'tachtenim. There should be a home for God in this lowest of worlds. That's dafke tshuva ma'asim tevim. So the Rebbe asks a shturim dika question. If that's the case, so the whole Mashiach and Geula is simply for us, not for God. Because we worked hard, so we need to get our candies, our reward. So we should have nachas ruach. But God's real nachas ruach is in the helam of Golus, in the work in Elam Haza, not in Elam Haba. In this world, the efforts we put, the exertion, the Mesiras Nefesh, the difficulties, that's where God gets his greatest pleasure. So is the Geula only basically sending us, okay, since you did it, we'll give you your candies, we'll give you your games, your toys that you need to gain pleasure. What does it do for God, so to speak? And the Rebbe says that if the etzem, atzmus, has to remain concealed, that's also a limitation. So the shlemus of atzmus is that atzmus too gets revealed in this world. It's not just that we have to see it. That if God remains concealed in Golus, as much as pleasure he has there, it's still a limitation because it's not revealed. And the goal is that it should be revealed, that the Gilui is negay and the etzem. It's not just for others. So in other words, even if you love someone deeply, it's not just enough. You have to be able to express it, act on it. You can't just say, I have love in my heart, and never express it, never feel it, never reveal it. So Gilui has a tremendous value in that sense because it brings into reality. It's just like when someone says, I'm with you, I support you, I love what you're doing, but they don't show it in any way. They don't write a check, or they don't any other way make an actual commitment. So it's all good, theoretically. But the bottom line is revelation, and that's where Yetzirah, even though it's a lower level than Beriyah, and it's taking the tzur, it's only giving the shape and form, but it's giving shape and form to something that was more amorphous and concealed, even though it was a higher level. It sounds to me that's maybe, so therefore two explanations in the quality of Yetzirah. One is what he said at the bottom on page 1388, where he spoke about Aspaklaya Me'ira, that you could see the mitzias of something. In Beriyah, you see, you can in Beriyah you can experience something a higher level, but it has to be concealed. You can't see it directly. In Yetzirah, it's like the Navi that's actually able to see it directly. And the next explanation is because of Gilui, the power of Gilui over Chomer, the power of Tzura over Chomer. So over the raw amorphous state, is the gili that when it starts becoming developed into details and so on. Okay. Any questions on this point? And now he's going to give some, I see some examples. The yesh lahoyer. Okay. This is going to be a little dense, a little Kabbalistic. So Chagas can be begilin mamish, because it's a lower level. Yeah, the interdependence, a lower level, it can be revealed, but revelation is critical here. Yeah, good. The Yesh Lahoyer, the Rebbe Rashab is now going to, the Yesh Lahoyer means we can comment. Me'in igulim v'yesher. So this is going to be somewhat of some type of similar idea. So igulim v'yesher, we know, is another name for makif and pnimi, or seviv and mamala. Igulim means circles, yesher means a straight line. So igulim refers to a higher state, a more transcendent state that surrounds us. And yesher is that penetrates within us. Essentially makif and pnimi. So he says, we know that the igulim l'mayla l'bchinas hayesher. The igulim l'mayla l'bchinas hayesher. The igulim are higher than yesher. First, you start with a energy that surrounds, and then that translates into an energy that penetrates, like the igul hagadol. First is a sphere, then comes the kav, which is yesher, a line that has a hierarchy, higher and lower. So the igulim circles are higher than lines. So the general level is ma'am b'chinas yesher, u'makol mokim, and nevertheless, we also know igulim is the level of b'chinas nefesh, the yesher b'chinas ruach, which seems to go counterintuitive. If igulim is higher, ruach is higher than nefesh. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yechida. And yet we say the igulim is the lower level of nefesh, and yesher is the level of ruach. So now he's going to explain what that means, because it's essentially the same idea. Igulim is a higher level, but it's not a revealed level. That's why it's a circle. It surrounds. It doesn't permeate. It doesn't penetrate. It's not immanent. It's transcendent. So in that sense, it's higher. But when you're talking about internalizing, like we spoke about, when a student is learning and they sense from the teacher something that's above their head, that's igulim. It's a higher level. But from a point of view of the student's benefit, I want to understand the idea that I can internalize, that I can relate to. So a lower level of firepower, but it's higher in the sense that it's ruach because it's revealed in me and I can access it. That's essentially what he's saying, and he's going to explain this. The hine be'etz chaim shar hanukudim perik zayin. Because now in Eitz Chaim, in the shar that's called Nukudim, chapter 7, Kosav, he writes the Shem Ma de Tikun Shu B'chinas Yesher. I'll explain what in a minute the level is. Shem Ma is the name of Bittul. We know Ma Ban Sag Ab. So Ma is the 45, is Yud Ke Vav Ke in the Milui. When you write it out as Hey Aleph, so it adds up to 45. That's Ma. That's what we call Shem Ma, the Bittul of the world of Tikkun, because in Tikkun Bittul reigns, whereas in Toyu you have the name Sag or Ban. This is the level of Yesher, because Tikkun is a world, a balanced world, where the energies are within containers, everything is internalized. It's not a world of Makifim, it's a world of Pnimi, Yesher. Hu B'Zah. That manifests in the level of Zah, Mides. Hu Yetzirah, Shu B'chinas Ruach. One second. Shema Dikun Shu B'chinas Yesher, Hu B'Zah. Hu Yetzirah, Shu B'chinas Ruach.
ובזו וביצירה, שהוא בחינת רוח. It's one המשך.
Okay. שהוא בחינת ישר, הוא בזו וביצירה, right? Because זו is Mekana Yetzirah. We know Bina, Nes in Beriyah, and Mides, as we learned earlier, Chagas of the Mishnah manifests and Nes in Yetzirah. Shubchinas Ruach. That's the level of Ruach. So we see here that Yesher, which means the balanced world of Tikkun, manifests in Zon Yetzirah. That's Ruach. The Zel Ruach Shal HaNekudim. And that's the Ruach of the level of the Nekudim. That is the level of Nekudim, the Ruach of Nekudim, which I'm not sure what he means by that. Let me see the parentheses. Okay, yeah, the parentheses explains it. Before we get to the Nekudim, let me just explain this in a little simpler English. As I said, he's going back into more dense Kabbalistic language. Even though we human beings, what distinguishes us from animals and from other species is our minds, right? That we have a mind, we have a superior mind, we have an ability to be objective and out with our minds, and we're not just Baalei Midas. We're not just driven by whim and impulses and instincts. We have Midas, but we have a moyach that can be shalat al alev. You can't expect a predator in the wild, for example, to fast on Yom Kippur. They're hungry, they're wired to hunt. And that's that. A human being can exercise discipline. Why? Because we have a mind. A mind also allows us to dream, to imagine, to go to higher places of transcendence that you can't go on your own. So we're not just a bundle of emotions. And yet, this explains that Adam, a human being, is essentially the essence of a human being are his emotions. Are his emotions. What does that mean? Because what defines you as a person, not the unique superiority that the mind, what defines you as a person is your personality, is your chesed, your gvurit. That's how your life plays itself out. We're not walking brains. We're not computers. We have a mind that can reflect, and it's a tool. But fundamentally, a human being is an emotional, relationship-oriented creature. It's not good. A person can't be alone. We need a companion. We need love. We need relationships. We need emotional interaction. And when you don't have that, a person is not going to be completely healthy. So you need emotions, but you need a mind that guides the emotions, so they don't just go wild and just follow whatever their impulsive temptation may be. So you need a mind that tells the emotions how to work. But essentially, the person is a Baal Midas in that sense. Why? Because that defines you. Your mind, yes, of course you could say there's a person who's a more Chochma person, a more Bina person, more Das. But what really defines a person is their personality, their emotional attributes. Where your chesed is, that's where you really see how a person functions and lives in this world, not just the brain. Why am I saying this? Because the level of Yetzirah is primarily that, the emotional personality in the spheres. Atzilus associates with Chochmah. Beriyah associates with Bina. And Zah associates with, and Yetzirah associates with Zah, with Midas. Midas is also Gili. What do I mean by Gili? If you want to know relationships, it's about relationships. If I love somebody, that's a Gili. That's an expression that is our interaction, our relationship. In the mind, as we discussed, a mind you could sit alone and learn, and you don't need anyone else. As a matter of fact, if someone comes while you're in the middle of concentration, it'll distract you. So the mind is much more for yourself, and Midas is for another. So it's essentially in the context, like we learned earlier about Mishnah and Yetzirah, it's already how the Torah is becoming relationship-oriented, meaning it's connecting with a form of Gilui to have a relationship, which is the halachas. Is it kosher? Is it not kosher? Is it pure? Is it impure? It's not just a concept. It's how your relationship, what halacha ultimately says, you should do this and don't do that. With these are the foods you should consume, these are the foods you can't. That he called before midas. So midas doesn't just mean emotions, midas also means measurements, and it also means structural, the structure of things. So as such, Yetzirah is that level. So when he says now that Shema the Tikkun is Yesher, is in Zoh, that's the level of Ruach, that's the level of Gilui. But he also adds that this is the Ruach of Nekudim. So that I'm going to leave for the next class to explain what that means. And that's based on the parentheses. He's going to speak about what Zav of Yetzirah does to the Eiris and the energies of Toyu that preceded Tikkun. That these midas have the power to repair the chaotic and unbalanced and unharmonious world of Toyu. But that's another point, and I don't want to confuse matters. We'll learn that tomorrow. So I'm going to stop right before the parentheses, right before Ruach Shel Nekudim. So meanwhile, the bottom line he's focusing on, he's now Yesh Lahoyer, Igulim V'Yesher, is bringing in the idea, the quality of Giluyim, which ultimately is going to teach us the mile of Yetzirah over Beriyah. And I'm going to stop here before the parentheses and let you ask anything and discuss this further.
Rabbi Jacobson, correct me if I'm in the wrong path of thinking, but this clarifies the whole argument when Rabbi Akiva was getting wrecked to death, and it says the Malachim were telling Hashem, "Is this the Torah and is this reward?" And Hashem says, "Don't say anything. I'm going to turn everything to Tov Ovu." He wasn't pulling ranks. What he was saying essentially is that in order for you to understand what's happening now, you have to break everything down all the way to it's like the raw material, and only then you understand what's going on with this picture. So, and essentially, and that's why it makes so much sense that the Talmud is the level of Beriyah, because think about it as like little bricks. Those are every argument of the sages are like these little bricks. And then you come to the next world of Yetzirah, which is like a wall, a brick wall. It's still not the whole picture, but it's give you more chomriot. And then you have the mikra, which is a completed brick house, the whole picture.
As I said yesterday when you asked, or 2 days ago, this is interesting speculation, interesting processing. I'm not there yet. I can't talk about Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud because I haven't seen what the Rebbe Rashab is going to say about it. I can't tell you whether it makes sense or doesn't. I'm not really sure. I'm sorry, I'm just not...
No, that's okay.
Again, I'm not negating it, but I'm not sure because don't have enough information here. He hasn't explained Mikra. He hasn't even explained Mishnah and Talmud in this context. Right now, he's explaining Beriyah Yetzirah, and I'm trying to wrap our heads around that, and let's see. Hopefully, he will come back and explain how it applies to what we've been learning. I do know that we have another 9 pages, or I should say 8 pages now, before he gets to Eir Hariyah, the 3rd level of the Eir HaMakabel. This is the 2nd level, the Eir of the bright stone. But he hasn't spoken about that also this goes back to page 1388. Okay. So hold the thought and we will get there. Very possible that what you're saying makes sense.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So we'll stop here. Being that it's my birthday as well as Hey Tavis, well, they go together. I want to extend to you on this auspicious day, my colleagues, students, friends, my warmest blessings, all your heart's desires, that God should bless you with abundance, materially and spiritually, and nachas from yourself and from your families and children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, if that applies, and all in good health. And we should all actualize and live up to our calling and what we should be accomplishing in this world. And learning Ayin Beis and Chassidus, obviously, is a big part of that. And including Hey Tavis is the day of the books, the day when we celebrate the books and we learn in them. So there's no better way to honor this day than study. I just gave a class, actually, this morning at the Kollel. It's recorded, it's online, about the significance of Hey Tavis like a 45-minute talk, which I think is I'm getting a lot of feedback. Really explains the significance of this day. And as I said, tonight I'll be bringing 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here in Beis Gimple. You can participate and join. Come say L'chaim for Heitevis for my birthday if you're here. And if it's a virtual, I just posted before the class on the group the link to the live stream tonight. So everybody, again, I thank you for your warmest wishes and blessings, and for your support and partnership and friendship. And we should all live up to our mission, which is the whole idea of a birthday. So thank you for helping me fulfill my mission in this world.
Amen. Amen to your bracha and mazel tov on your simcha.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kol hamevorech mizborech.
Amen. Great.
Amen.
As a matter of fact, you know what? I'll give you a little preview. I'm recording today a birthday, my birthday blessings. I'm going to put it out there. I mean, this is a personal one to you, but I'm going to put it out there. And I decided, since it's Hey Tevis, usually birthdays you receive gifts. So I decided I'm going to give a gift. Anyone who makes a request, we're going to send them a free book, one of our books from our library. So we'll see what happens. If it's thousands and thousands of requests, so be it.
Lovely. Okay.
And with the goal, obviously, the goal, of course, is that people should share that book and share its message and help subscribe people and get people involved in some way or another, exposed to these teachings. Join an Ayin Beis class. Yeah. Pay it forward.
Meaningful Life. If we go to meaningfullife.com, we can find that opportunity, or we have to be on the email list?
The idea just came to us literally 1 o'clock in the morning last night.
That's beautiful. Well, is it toward a meaningful life, or is it something else?
We have several books, the Omer book, 60 Days, Beyond the Letter of the Law. We'll see what we have in stock. Maybe we'll just, if people make a specific request, maybe we'll give it to them, or we'll just let it be a surprise,
Beautiful.
And if people have the book, they can always give it as a gift,
Beautiful. It's very kind of you. Shakach.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Can your boo.
Listen, people have been donating and helping us, even though our programs are free and everything, but still, I think it's a nice gesture on this day, and thank God. No, we'll let people know. I'm gonna do the video. We'll send it out. It'll shortly be up there. They're working on it.
Very beautiful.
Okay.
We'll look forward to this for bringing Mazel Tov again. And
Thank you, everybody.
You say good Yontif on Hey Tevis or not, but it is a Yontif.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And okay, so we'll continue tomorrow or tonight in the Fabrengen, but we'll continue the class tomorrow. And again, great being with you.
Mrs. Schneider conveys her glee and her happiness for your birthday in Hey Tevis.
Yeah, I saw from a distance, the chat. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. The emojis. Okay, everyone, be well. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.